Hi, I'm Brian. Welcome to Autogefuhl and welcome to the latest edition of the Ford Focus ST. $1.82 in width or 71.5 inches. There's not huge amounts of change here in the design of the Focus ST. I guess my take on that would be, look, if it's not broken, why fix it? This is a very stylish, angular car. I think they've done a really nice job of keeping enough of the characteristics while giving it that really desirable sporty edge. Look, for example, at the satin finish on this grille. It makes it look as if it's an alloy. Of course, it's not, it's plastic, but it looks good and solid and fits the aggressive styling in this lower portion of the design. 4.39 meters in length or 172 inches. Everything about the side profile of this car is just about adding subtle, sporty components to, I think, an already fairly successful design. In combination with the drop-down height, which is about 10 millimeters, that's about that much off the height of the standard Focus. I really think you are going to want to go with these larger wheels. Aesthetically, it looks really pleasing. Now, if you look at the underskirting they've put right at the bottom of the door in combination with these dark alloy wheels, and I really like this bright orange color. Might not be everybody's taste, but if you're going to own a sportier version of a standard car, for me it really needs to pop, and that's what this design achieves. Round at the back we can see the most challenging design aesthetic of the ST. It's 1.49 meters in height or 59 inches right to the top of this antenna here. Why challenging? Well, this is where taking a standard chassis and adapting it is always problematic. A Focus is designed to be a family-friendly car from an aesthetic perspective. Here we have this much bulkier lower third portion. The reason for this is obviously to make it look much more sporty and dynamic. Does that work visually? Well, yes, it does. I like the integration of these new side-by-side, well, either side is what I mean, exhaust ports. They're nice and big and meaty, but subtle and discreet too. They're real and they don't have chrome tips, which I think is a good move for this car. Well, we can talk all day about the aesthetics of this car, but this is the heart of the machine and this is where the real changes have taken place. What you are looking at right there is one of the two engines available, and it's the petrol. 2.3 litres, 280 horsepower, 420 Newton meters of torque. You get your choice between either this one or a 2-litre diesel, which is 190 horsepower, 400 Newton meters of torque. Car keys are fairly standard affair, but you do get this nice ST logo on the back, just so when you put your keys down in the bar, everybody's sure which one is yours. Now I want to ask Thomas to keep a fairly short focus because I'm really keen to show you this feature. This is not the first car to feature this, but I really like when manufacturers think to do this. I have no concept of how complicated it is to integrate this into a door design, but I wish every single car came with it. It's a small thing, but if you've ever had a child use your car, you will know why this is one of the greatest inventions ever to occur. In keeping with a lot of other Fords, there is a lot of plastic going throughout this car, and some of it is not quite as nicely finished as it might be, but at price point, I really don't care about that, and I don't think most other people will either. Honestly, the controls are nicely finished, and that really is what I care about because I'm going to be touching those a lot. There's a really nice accenting detail between the handle here and just the way that the inlay is styled. And although these trim details aren't the most amazing thing that you've ever seen, there's just enough visual detail here to make this car feel a little bit more premium. Well, If when I sit in this car it looks a little bit difficult for me to get into, that's only because I have extremely short legs. So if you're sharp-eyed, you might notice my driving position is very far towards the front to make sure that I have enough space to reach the pedals. So there is actually a lot more room in here for a regular sized person. But because of those short legs and long torso, I am well proportioned to be able to show you the height of this car. I am 5 feet 10 or 178 centimeters, but my torso is comparable with somebody about 6'1". I know, weird, right? So if you look at my headroom, you can see that I have ample space in here. For a smaller car, this is a pleasure. This gives me a great feeling when I sit here. The driving position is really superb. High enough that I feel like I'm on top of the road, low enough in the car that I feel I have a good position of power for all of that exciting driving that I want to do. When we look to the dashboard, we can see that there's a nice integration of a very well-known and familiar looking Ford central digital display and 2 analog dials. There's nothing here to get that excited about, but conversely, there's nothing to get upset about either. This is just very functional, very straightforward, and if you've driven any modern Ford in, say, the last 3 years, you will be more than familiar with the way that this looks and operates. The steering wheel gives us lots of options to be able to change various elements of that and access different features of the drive without taking our hands off the wheel, which obviously in the ST is very important. Here we have the all-important sports mode button. You're going to want to know where that is and how it works, and the mode selector. Now, if Thomas can show you on the display, I'm going to show you how the mode selector looks when you cycle through. Now, because we have the performance pack fitted to this car, we also have this, which is track use. Now, clearly you don't have to be on a racetrack for that, but it does switch off your traction control. That obviously makes the car more fun to drive, but more challenging as well. So that is performance pack feature only. If you don't go with that, you're only going to get this wet mode, the standard mode, and the sports mode. This screen will look very familiar to any modern Ford users as well. So, okay, it's not the best looking integration, it's not the best looking screen, but I am happy to tell you that there have been some changes here. The things that I notice, having spent a lot of time in newer Fords, is that they've finally put some really good care and attention into the angling, the positioning, and the quality of this display. So the protective cover here is much less anti-glare than I've seen before. The angling of the screen is great, so we get much less in the way of reflections, and not only is the definition very nice on the screen, but the responsiveness is actually pretty good too. Very nice, uncluttered and straightforward controls here. Thank you, Ford, for giving me a good old-fashioned, easy to access volume on-off knob. That really is very straightforward indeed. And for once, this, a few other manufacturers could learn from, the on-off button is only for the media and the entertainment, so I don't forever switch off my display by mistake. Very simple, very uncluttered, and if the screen bothers you while driving, you can just switch that straight off too. As you can see, it's actually pretty responsive, and I like the way the software interface works. Now, slightly lower down, again, I think Ford have done a great job with this. Look, we have enough space here in this center console to realistically fit 2 phones. And that's actually great, because you regularly take a passenger who wants to take advantage of charging. Sadly, there's only one USB charge point, but if I'm owning this car, I'm immediately putting a second one into this lighter socket anyway, so I don't think that's a big problem. Plenty of space here for bigger phones and an inductive charging pad on the left side. Here in the middle, you can see the automatic park brake and obviously the park brake itself. One slight observation, it would have been nice to have had a simple light here. You do get notification on the dashboard when you put your parking brake on. I don't know, I always think you can never have too many notifications to let you know whether your parking brake is on or not. So that's just my personal taste. Coming slightly further over, this is a really nice feature. You can see these are on runners, and what that allows you to do is to make sure that whatever the size of container you put in here, it is held exactly where you want it. So how's the experience for the rear seat passengers? Well, as is so often the case, the designers have to make a hard choice here as to whether they want to go with replicating that front seat experience and costing you any usability in the middle. And here they've clearly decided that the most important thing to do is to make sure you can still fit 3 people back here. And that's clearly the right decision to make. Why? Well, as much fun as you're going to have driving around in this thing, my suspicion is most of the people buying this are still going to need to fit kids in the back at some point. And as you can see, For a smaller car, the middle seat really is not bad at all. Now, again, I mentioned while I was in the front, I do have particularly short legs, so this is really not a fair comparison. This driver's seat is set for me. This passenger seat is set for Thomas, and this gives you a much fairer impression of how much legroom you get back here. So with all of this power, do we still have room back here to put anything? What you are looking at is 273 litres of load space, and that is only up to the parcel shelf. So if we take the parcel shelf out and see how it works without these seats in, we can get a sense of what the full load space actually looks like. Now, obviously, I'm expecting you're going to be having far too much fun driving this for most of its life. Now, our luggage is actually in the back, so that's not folding flat, but I'll fold the seat to the side so it's completely flat and you can see how flat it will go. There we go. So how does the ST behave once you actually get it out on the road? Well, the first thing that I think I have to make absolutely clear is that if you're considering buying one of these and your friends are saying, come on, it's just a facelift and the last ST, was it really all that good? Well, I can assure you, there is very little of the DNA in this car that still remains from the previous ST. And the reason we've started off this driving section nice and slow is because there's so much to talk about that's changed here. The first thing that you notice when you sit in this car is quite what a great job Recaro have done with these seats. Now, Recaro have been making seats for an awfully long time and they feature in a very wide range of vehicles, but let's be honest, they can be a bit hit and miss. And principally the reason for that is because what they do best is design racing seats for racing. Well, that doesn't always lend itself to a particularly comfortable ride. If you can pick up on the sound, I'm not actually making that much noise at the moment. The reason for that is I'm taking advantage of the driving modes to just start off nice and gently in normal. So the weight on the steering is the most notable thing. Once you start putting some speed into the corners, it feels just right. There's just enough heft to make you feel that you really do have control. That tighter steering response and the much more aggressive lock turn that you have on the wheel means that you have much more weight and solidity when you do power into corners. Finally, a fairly empty piece of road. Thomas, what do you think? Is this going to work?
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay, we have waited a long time to find some road with no cyclists and good curves. So here we are, finally. We are at Griolia, just outside of Nice, and this is the Focus ST. So we're in sports mode right now. And if you didn't know it by the way that the car handles, the satisfying burbles at the end of a gear change just let you know. Now, one thing I really do think is worth mentioning about this car, and before I say it, bearing in mind this could just be my personal taste, obviously at Autogefuel we drive an awful lot of different cars and they take a varying amount of time to feel comfortable in and get used to. This car has taken the least amount of time for me to feel at home in, I think, of any car that I've driven, certainly this year. After 5 minutes driving this car, it felt like I'd owned it for the last 2 years. Driving experience, absolutely superb. If I had a hat, I would take it off to Ford. I think they have done fantastic things with the redesign of this car. And if it's anything to talk about where Ford is going in future, then I think it's certainly the right direction. So the Focus ST, does it all add up to a sum of its parts? Well, I'm going to give it a resounding yes. Why? Well, at its price point, which depending on your region comes in around about between 30 and 35,000 if you go with the optional extras, and I honestly can't for the life of me understand why you would get an ST without that performance pack. Trust me, you want everything that they can throw at this car. So if you're looking for a car in this sector, don't take my word for it. Take one out, give it a drive, and please let us know how you find it. If you have any comments or questions, please put them below, please subscribe, and we hope we'll see you all again soon.